Welcome to the Medal of Honor induction ceremony in honor of Valor 24. The Valor 24 recipients were awarded our nation's highest and most prestigious award for valor by the President of the United States, the Medal of Honor. This morning, they will formally be inducted into the Pentagon's most sacred place, the Hall of Heroes. Our hosts for today's ceremony are the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Chuck Hagel, the Secretary of the Army, the Honorable John M. McHugh, the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Ray Odierno, and the Sergeant Major of the Army, Ray Chandler. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Sergeant First Class Pablo Talamante, and the invocation, which will be delivered by Chaplain Charles R. Bailey.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket regulated the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
This prayer is prayed on behalf of all faiths and spiritual journeys that are here today. Let us pray. Almighty Father, whose command is over all and whose love never fails, let us be aware of your presence and obedient to your will. We acknowledge what we have achieved was done through you and because of you. We acknowledge also that what we have accomplished is due to those you have placed around us in support and inspiration. In this sacred moment of recognition of courage and humility, we thank you for those who have shared their love of their nation and the courage to preserve it. We also acknowledge our debt to those who have stood beside us in battle, that have given their lives for their country, for freedom, justice, and liberty. May we never forget the values of their sacrifice, nor the nobility of courage, nor tenacity of endurance, which have purchased for us peace, liberty, in pursuit of happiness. Now, O God, help us to prize and keep this heritage, that we may be true as they were true, loyal as they were loyal, courageous as they were courageous. Grant unto us the wisdom to weigh and evaluate the greater issues of life and forever live, fight, and die for these great causes. We humbly pray for peace, not only among nations, but among and within ourselves. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense.
Good morning, Secretary McHugh, General Odierno, Mrs. Odierno, Sergeant Major Chandler, Congressman Deutsch, Congressman Collins, ladies and gentlemen. We're here this morning to celebrate the heroism of 24 selfless individuals, 24 soldiers whose acts of gallantry in battle merit our highest recognition. We're also here to correct an injustice of history, to help right 24 wrongs that should never have occurred. Before we do, I want to recognize another soldier here today, a man who President Obama acknowledged and commended yesterday. His name is Mitch Liebman, and he was the driving force behind this effort to award the Medal of Honor to Jewish and Hispanic service members who had earned it, but had never received it because of racial or religious discrimination. When Mitch found out that his childhood friend had been denied the Medal of Honor, he decided to do whatever was necessary to rectify it. He never gave up. And though it took a long time, too long, he was able to see the record set straight, not only for his friend, but for 23 other soldiers. Some of these soldiers gave their lives in service to this nation. Others have passed away. But we are honored to have 3 of those recipients here with us today. Mitch, on behalf of everyone in this auditorium and in this country, thank you. We're grateful for your hard work and your persistence. We're also grateful for the tireless work of the United States Army and many others who helped identify and verify every heroic deed that we honor here today. Thank you all for making this happen. Today, we not only recognize the heroism of these 24 brave Americans, we also recognize the significance of the Medal of Honor, our nation's highest honor presented for valor. The names that grace the walls of the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes belong to soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who represent the essence, the finest, the best of military service. The essence, the willingness to sacrifice your life for the lives of those around you. Nearly 70 years ago, a Jewish chaplain who had just lived through the carnage at Iwo Jima led his fellow Marines in dedicating a cemetery on that island. They were burying their friends and their comrades, men of all religions, all races, all creeds. In mourning them, he observed, "Here lies officers and men of all colors, rich men and poor men, all together. Here are Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, together. Here, no man prefers another because of his faith, or despises another because of their color. Here, there are no quotas of how many from each group are admitted or allowed. Thus do we memorialize those who, having ceased living with us, now live within us. Thus do we consecrate ourselves, the living, to carry on the struggle they began. Too much blood has gone into this soil for us to ever let it lie barren. Too much pain and heartache have fertilized the earth on which we stand. We here solemnly swear this shall not be in vain." Today, on the doorstep of our nation's capital, we honor 24 heroes with the same solemn pledge that was given on the island of Iwo Jima, that their sacrifice shall never be in vain. Thank you for what you all have done for our country. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Army.
Good morning. Very special day. Secretary Hagel, sir, thank you, obviously, for your gracious words and your presence here today, but as well for the tremendous leadership and steady hand you brought in these very challenging times. Chief, Mrs. O, Sergeant Major, distinguished members of Congress, all of the Department of Defense family, particularly those from the United States Army, but especially to the families and the honorees who are with us here today, welcome. It's wonderful to see all of you again. As I have become the 21st Secretary of the Army, I've had many occasions to attend some pretty historic events. And it probably should go without saying, today is certainly one of them. As President Obama noted yesterday, this induction serves as the largest single induction of Medal of Honor honorees since World War II. 24 amazing soldiers who will finally take their rightful place in our Hall of Heroes. Their stories, nearly 24 in total, are as diverse as was their service, and their hometowns were truly spread from sea to shining sea. 12 different states, as well as Puerto Rico and Mexico. They valiantly, they defiantly, in German forests, and Korean hilltops, and Vietnam countryside, fought, fighting always against a tremendous and fierce enemy, and equally tremendous odds. Each of their stories, when taken alone, are truly breathtaking, but taken together, they really form an incredible volume of history, one that details the service, the sacrifice, and most of all, the courage of the American soldier. And we are truly blessed that 3 of these Medal of Honor recipients are here in this hall this morning. I'd like to take just a second, if I may, to introduce them to you. They are Sergeant Santiago Aravea, Sergeant First Class Melvin Morris, and Master Sergeant Jose Rodela. Gentlemen, please rise and be recognized for your incredible achievements. To these true American heroes, I would simply say it is a deep honor to be in your company, and thank you for your service and your sacrifice, as you've just heard, and I hope you have gotten a flavor for over these past several days. You are an inspiration to us all. God bless you. Please have a seat. I would tell you, though, gentlemen, beyond your personal courage, we also look at you at this moment as the embodiment of 21 other heroes, as the Secretary mentioned. We also honor this day those whom we did not thank, we did not properly recognize either in our time or, more importantly, in theirs. During a speech in the House of Commons less than 2 months before the D-Day invasion, Winston Churchill remarked that while a medal glitters, it also casts a shadow. The medal that each of these heroes has earned and now wears symbolizes obviously tremendous personal courage and uncommon valor. But at the same time, it does cloak the auditorium, cloak it in a shadow that's cast by the spirit and the sacrifice of all those who were honored yesterday at the White House by President Obama. Their memories and their stories preserved and passed on by family members also who were there yesterday and were pleased, so pleased, are with us here today. And if I would ask, I would please ask those family members representing this tremendous Medal of Honor class to stand for a moment so that you too can be recognized for the sacrifice that your loved ones rendered to this nation. Please. My dad, who was wise in many ways, but perhaps genetics and science was not amongst them, used to say when he was, on rare occasions, proud of my brother or myself, you know, you plant tomatoes, you get tomatoes. your relatives planted some pretty great tomatoes. It's been wonderful, wonderful getting to know you, and God bless you for being here. Thank you. As Secretary Hagel accurately spoke, as proud and historic and just as this day may be, it is frankly not without some controversy and some lingering concern. This effort, indeed, as the Secretary noted, began because there was a belief, we now know justified, that Jewish and Hispanic service members who fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam may have been unjustly denied the Medal of Honor due to the racial or religious prejudice of those times. We've come far as a nation. We've come far as an army, but we must never fail to recognize the bias, the prejudice, and hate have too often played a role in our nation's history. President Kennedy once observed that no one has been barred from the battlefield on account of his race or fighting and dying for America. There's no distinction, he said, between race or religion in the foxholes and the graveyards of battle. As we continue to this day to ask America's sons and daughters to join and to fight together as one, to struggle for a better and more secure future, we should not only heed but truly expand and build upon President Kennedy's wise perspective. Never separating those who serve by any means, not by skin, not by color, not by race, not by belief, and striving at all times to ensure tolerance and respect in all things, and especially all people. Thanks to the review that led to this day, we did in fact, as we now all know, identify 24 soldiers, either here or represented, whose courage and valor were indeed worthy of our nation's highest military honor. What began as a review of potential prejudice yielded other awardees, also wholly deserving of the Medal of Honor. For reasons that really had nothing to do with our imperfect history, we can only assume they were overlooked and missed instead through the influence of a long-standing and sadly ongoing evil, that of the military bureaucracy. At this point in time, we hope, we believe we've at last righted all our wrongs, regardless of the cause or motivation. But no matter how this journey began, I do personally take heart in the Army's ensuing effort and pride in those people who pored over the thousands of pages of decades-old records, who pieced together the narratives and stories that had been faded by time, who were able to identify and at last help us properly recognize the individuals we honor at this moment. If I have one regret, it's that so few are here to receive this honor and our thanks in person. Many we lost to the passage of time. Many, too, were lost on the battlefields of Europe and East and Southeast Asia, often after giving their very lives in service to their country. General Douglas MacArthur believed that however horrible the incidents of war may be, the soldier who is called upon to offer and to give his life for his country is what he described the noblest development of mankind. Each of these 24 soldiers offered their lives, if necessary, in service to our country and something larger than themselves. Their selfless sacrifice saved countless of lives, the lives of other soldiers, of comrades, of buddies in arms, the untold millions who today enjoy the fruits of freedom they would have never otherwise known. Each has earned this nation's highest military honor, claiming their rightful place in history for their personal acts of uncommon valor, always above and beyond the call of duty. Today, they are what they have always been, the noblest development of mankind. So let us go forth from this moment, learning and advancing the painful lessons of days gone by, celebrating the sacrifices and the achievements of those who have gone before, and expanding upon the bedrock of freedom that they forged by their valor, so that future generations might know and bask in what these heroes amazingly defended, the hope and the promise of a better tomorrow. So God bless these 24 heroes, their families. God bless all of you, the United States of America, and this glorious Army who keeps us free. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor for me to stand here today wearing this uniform, representing all soldiers past and present, in honoring our comrades, these 24 great men who gave their lives and sacrificed so much for our country. Secretary of Defense Hagel, we're grateful for your incredible dedication. Thank you so much for being here. Secretary of the Army McHugh, thank you for your leadership, continued leadership, and all you do to make sure that all our soldiers are properly recognized. Sergeant Major Chandler, thank you for your leadership of our enlisted force. Deputy Secretary of Defense, Undersecretary of Defense, thank you so much for being here. Other leaders, general officers, congressmen, senators, family members, it's an honor for me to be here today. In the faces of our recipients and their relatives, we see the faces of 24 heroes. They are the faces of a diverse Army and a diverse America, faces that have shaped our nation's history, built this nation's strength, and defended this nation's security. Our nation and our Army are strong because in every war, in every generation, men and women, citizens and immigrants have raised their right hand to defend the Constitution of the United States. In doing so, they committed themselves to a cause greater than themselves, and most importantly, to the ideals of this nation. Each of our heroes are different, whether it be their rank, age, unit, campaign, geographic, ethnic, or religious diversity. But they are all bound together as soldiers, ordinary men who, under the most chaotic and difficult conditions, displayed extraordinary courage at the risk of their own lives to protect their fellow soldiers and simply accomplish the mission. It is because of men like them, through the generations, that I'm so proud to wear this uniform. 70 years ago, the United States called upon millions of Americans to defend the nation in World War II. Today, we recognize 7 remarkable soldiers who responded. In the closing days of the Anzio campaign, Private First Class Salvador Lara of the 45th Infantry Division led a squad assault on multiple enemy strongpoints with such ferocity that numerous enemy soldiers were killed, surrendered, or abandoned their posts. Private Joe Gondara, 3 days after the 82nd Airborne's invasion of Normandy, France, advanced alone while his compatriots were pinned down by enemy fire to destroy 3 machine gun nests before he was fatally wounded. First Lieutenant Donald Schwab of the 3rd Infantry Division charged a heavily reinforced German emplacement by taking an enemy soldier hostage and caused the enemy unit to withdraw from their superior defensive positions. Fellow 3rd Infantry Division soldier, Private First Class William Leonard, led the 8 surviving members of his platoon to eliminate 2 machine gun nests and capture the objective of Saint-Die, France. Ignoring the severity of his wounds, Staff Sergeant Manuel Mendoza of the 88th Infantry Division engaged 200 enemy troops advancing on Mount Battaglia, Italy, killing 30 of them and successfully defending the key terrain. Sergeant Alfred Neitzel of the 1st Infantry Division gave his life in his efforts to slow the advance of enemy soldiers and cover the retreat of his squad mates during brutal operation in Germany's Hurtgen forest. In the same campaign, Private Pedro Cano of the 4th Infantry Division single-handedly destroyed 8 machine gun emplacements and killed nearly 30 enemy troops. In the 5 long months that followed, the action of these soldiers contributed measurably to the Allied victory in Europe. Only 5 short years later, President Truman again mobilized the country for war, this time to repel the advances of communist North Korea. And today we honor the extraordinary actions of 9 Korean War veterans. Sergeant Eduardo Gomez of the 1st Cavalry Division demolished an enemy tank and held his ground in the face of unyielding enemy force, exacting heavy enemy casualties and delaying the enemy's advance on friendly positions. Alongside fellow 1st Cavalryman Master Sergeant Michael Pena, a veteran of World War II, ordered his unit to retreat in the face of relentless enemy and sacrificed himself to cover their safe withdrawal. Corporal Joe Baldonado of the 187th Airborne Regiment, Rakkasans, 101st Airborne Division, repeatedly disrupted wave after wave of enemy assaults until a grenade took his life during the enemy's final withdrawal. 24th Infantry Division soldier, Private First Class Leonard Kravitz, covered the retreat of his squad mates, successfully halting the enemy's advance until he was killed by enemy fire. As enemy forces counterattacked his platoon's position, Sergeant Jack Weinstein, also of the 24th Infantry Division, refused orders to withdraw and inflicted multiple casualties on the enemy until another platoon arrived to drive back enemy forces. 3rd Infantry Division soldier, Master Sergeant Juan Negron, similarly refused to abandon his platoon under heavy enemy fire, attacking the enemy at close range with small weapons fire and hand grenades until friendly forces arrived the next morning. Private Demencio Rivera, also of the 3rd Infantry Division, took extraordinary measures to repulse enemy forces with every means available, including the use of his last hand grenade to kill enemy soldiers in close proximity to himself. Corporal Victor Espinoza of the 2nd Infantry Division destroyed 4 enemy strong points and an enemy tunnel system in Charwan Valley, killing 14 and wounding 11. Despite suffering wounds from a previous battle, fellow 2nd Infantry Division soldier, Private Manuel Vera, fighting in the same valley, attacked a critical enemy emplacement and later lost his life while covering the withdrawal of his squad. In 3 years of fierce fighting, these 9 soldiers, alongside hundreds of thousands of other Americans, turned back the tide of communist advance against South Korea. And all you have to do today is visit South Korea to understand the difference these men made in the lives of millions of people. In 1965, the American ground war in Vietnam began. Today, we reflect upon the commensurate service and sacrifice of our Vietnam veterans and their families, who bore a heavy burden during and following a divisive war, teaching our nation an invaluable lesson about honoring one's service regardless of politics. We pay tribute to the exceptional heroism of 8 soldiers. The 1st Infantry Division, Sergeant Candelario Garcia, destroyed 2 bunkers and rescued several wounded comrades before rejoining his platoon to overrun the remaining enemy positions. Staff Sergeant Felix Conde Falcone of the 82nd Airborne Division led his platoon on an assault on an enemy command post and personally eliminated 4 bunkers before he was fatally wounded. Specialist 4 Jesus Duran of the 1st Cavalry Division thwarted an enemy attack on the unit's command posts by assaulting multiple enemy positions, killing 4, and forcing the enemy's hasty withdrawal. With his units pinned down, attempting to rescue another platoon, fellow 1st Cav soldier, Specialist 4 Leonard Alvarado, maneuvered forward alone to destroy multiple enemy emplacements before he was struck down by enemy fire. 25th Infantry Division soldier Specialist 4 R.D. Kopis was mortally wounded while safeguarding the evacuation of fellow soldiers during an attack by our superior forces in Cambodia. While administering first aid, Specialist 4 Santiago Aravilla of the 101st Airborne Division came under heavy fire and took immediate action to silence 4 enemy bunkers and their occupants, preventing his company from being overrun. Staff Sergeant Melvin Morris of the 5th Special Forces Group acted decisively during a fierce enemy attack to retrieve the body of his team commander and other wounded soldiers and launch a counterattack that destroyed 4 enemy bunkers. And as a company commander in the 5th Special Forces Group, Sergeant First Class Jose Rodela advanced alone under intense enemy fire to destroy a B-40 rocket position and reorganize the company's defensive perimeter, preventing the enemy from overrunning the battalion. Every one of the stories that I outlined is awe-inspiring. Taken together, the actions of these 24 soldiers are an incredible illustration of the competence, commitment, and character resident in our soldiers, in our veterans, and in our Army. In closing, let us pause to remember the sacrifices of every soldier who gave their last full measure on a distant battlefield. As Sergeant First Class Retired Melvin Morris reminds us, it is those that aren't even here to receive their medals. Those are my heroes. They gave their life. They gave everything. They gave it all. We are a nation that stands for liberty and freedom, and we believe that all should be given the opportunity to fulfill their dreams. We have taken too long to recognize these men, but they represent the soul and fabric of this great nation for which they so nobly served. We not only honor their courage and service, but we recognize their everlasting impact that they have had on this great nation. The strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And that's what makes us Army strong. Thank you very much.
Secretary Hagel, Secretary McHugh, and Sergeant Major of the Army Chandler will now join General Odierno on the stage for the induction ceremony. Secretary Hagel will present the Medal of Honor flag to Medal of Honor recipients from the Vietnam conflict. They will then be inducted into the Hall of Heroes. On 23 October 2002, Public Law 107-248, Section 8143, established the Medal of Honor flag to recognize service members who have distinguished themselves by gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. The Medal of Honor flag commemorates the sacrifice and blood shed for our freedoms and gives emphasis to the Medal of Honor being the highest award for valor by an individual serving in the armed forces of the United States. The light blue color with gold fringe bearing 13 white stars are adapted from the Medal of Honor ribbon. Specialist 4, Santiago J. Aravilla. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Specialist 4, Santiago J. Aravilla, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist 4 Santiago J. Aravilla distinguished himself on 21 May 1969 while serving as a radio telephone operator in Company C, 1st Battalion, Air Mobile, 501st Infantry, 101st Airborne Division, Air Mobile, during a search and clear mission near Tam Kỳ, Republic of Vietnam. Through his heroic actions, the lives of the wounded were saved and the members of the company command post were relieved from a very precarious situation. His exemplary performance in the face of overwhelming danger was an inspiration to his entire company and contributed immeasurably to the success of the mission. Specialist 4 Aravia's conspicuous gallantry, extraordinary heroism, and intrepidity at the risk of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, were in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Staff Sergeant Melvin Morris. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Melvin Morris, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Melvin Morris distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as commander of a strike force drawn from Company Delta, 5th Special Forces Group, Airborne, 1st Special Forces, during combat operations against an armed enemy in the vicinity of Chi Lang, Republic of Vietnam, on September 17, 1969. On that afternoon, Staff Sergeant Morris's affiliated companies encountered an extensive enemy minefield and were subsequently engaged by a hostile force. Staff Sergeant Morris learned by radio that a fellow team commander had been killed near an enemy bunker, and he immediately reorganized his men into an effective assault posture before advancing forward and splitting off with 2 men to recover the team commander's body. Observing the maneuver, the hostile force concentrated its fire on Staff Sergeant Morris's 3-man element and successfully wounded both men accompanying him. After assisting the 2 wounded men back to his force's lines, Staff Sergeant Morris charged forward into withering enemy fire with only his men's suppressive fire as cover. While enemy machine gun emplacements continually directed strafing fusillades against him, Staff Sergeant Morris destroyed the positions with hand grenades and continued his assault, ultimately eliminating 4 bunkers. Upon reaching the bunker nearest the fallen team commander, Staff Sergeant Morris repulsed the enemy, retrieved his comrade, and began the arduous trek back to friendly lines. He was wounded 3 times as he struggled forward, but ultimately succeeded in returning his fallen comrade to a friendly position. Staff Sergeant Morris's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Sergeant First Class Jose Rodela. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Jose Rodela, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant First Class Jose Rodela distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as the company commander, Detachment B-36, Company A, 5th Special Forces Group, Airborne, 1st Special Forces, during combat operations against an armed enemy in Phuoc Long Province, Republic of Vietnam, on September 1, 1969. That afternoon, Sergeant First Class Rodela's battalion came under an intense barrage of mortar, rocket, and machine gun fire. Ignoring the withering enemy fire, Sergeant First Class Rodela immediately began placing his men into defensive positions to prevent the enemy from overrunning the entire battalion. Repeatedly exposing himself to enemy fire, Sergeant First Class Rodela moved from position to position, providing suppressing fire and assisting wounded, and was himself wounded in the back and head by a B-40 rocket while recovering a wounded comrade. Alone, Sergeant First Class Rodela assaulted and knocked out the B-40 rocket position before successfully returning to the battalion's perimeter. Sergeant First Class Rodela's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Ms. Lenora Alvarado, accepting on behalf of her father, Specialist 4, Leonard L. Alvarado. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Specialist 4, Leonard L. Alvarado, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist 4 Leonard L. Alvarado distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a rifleman with Company Delta, 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division, during combat operations against an armed enemy in Phuoc Long Province, Republic of Vietnam, on August 12, 1969. On that day, as Specialist 4 Alvarado and a small reaction force moved through dense jungle en route to a beleaguered friendly platoon, Specialist 4 Alvarado detected enemy movement and opened fire. Despite his quick reaction, Specialist 4 Alvarado and his comrades were soon pinned down by the hostile force that blocked the path to the trapped platoon. Specialist 4 Alvarado quickly moved forward through the hostile machine gun fire in order to engage the enemy troops. Suddenly, an enemy grenade exploded nearby, wounding and momentarily stunning him. Retaliating immediately, he killed the grenadier just as another enemy barrage wounded him again. Specialist 4 Alvarado crawled forward through the fusillade to pull several comrades back within the hastily formed perimeter. Realizing his element needed to break away from the hostile force, Specialist 4 Alvarado began maneuvering forward alone. Through repeatedly thrown to the ground by exploding satchel charges, he continued advancing and firing, silencing several emplacements, including one enemy machine gun position. From his dangerous forward position, he persistently laid suppressive fire on the hostile forces, and after the enemy troops had broken contact, his comrades discovered that he had succumbed to his wounds. Specialist 4 Alvarado's extraordinary heroism and selflessness at the cost of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Mr. Richard Conde, accepting on behalf of his father, Staff Sergeant Felix M. Conde Falcone. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Felix M. Conde Falcone, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Felix M. Conde Falcone distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as an acting platoon leader in Company Delta, 1st Battalion, 505th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division, during combat operations against an armed enemy in Ap Tan Hoa, Republic of Vietnam, on April 4th, 1969. While entering a heavily wooded section on the route of advance, Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone and his company encountered an extensive enemy bunker complex, later identified as a battalion command post. Following tactical artillery and airstrikes on the heavily secured enemy position, Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone's platoon was selected to assault and clear the bunker fortifications. Moving out ahead of his platoon, Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone charged the first bunker, heaving grenades as he went. As the hostile fire increased, he crawled to the blind side of an entrenchment position, jumped to the roof, and tossed a grenade into the bunker aperture. Without hesitating, he proceeded to 2 additional bunkers, both of which he destroyed in the same manner as the first. Rejoining his platoon, Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone advanced about 100 meters through the trees before coming under intense hostile fire. Selecting 3 men to accompany him, he maneuvered toward the enemy's flank position. Carrying a machine gun, he single-handedly assaulted the nearest fortification, killing the enemy inside before running out of ammunition. After returning to the 3 men with his empty weapon and taking up an M16 rifle, he concentrated on the next bunker. Within 10 meters of his goal, Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone was shot by an unseen assailant and soon died of his wounds. Staff Sergeant Conde Falcone's extraordinary heroism and selflessness at the cost of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Mr. Sherelle John Copus, accepting on behalf of her father, Specialist 4, Artie R. Copus. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Specialist 4 Artie R. Copus, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist 4 Artie R. Copus distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a machine gunner in Company Charlie, 1st Battalion, Mechanized, 5th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division during combat operations against an armed enemy near Phromius Hek, Cambodia, on May 12, 1970. That morning, Specialist 4 Copus's company was suddenly attacked by a large hostile force firing recoilless rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, and automatic weapons. As Specialist 4 Copus began returning fire, his armored car was struck by an enemy recoilless round, knocking him to the ground and injuring 4 American soldiers beside the vehicle. Ignoring his own wounds, Specialist 4 Copus quickly remounted the burning vehicle and commenced firing his machine gun at the belligerents. Braving the hostile fire directed at him and the possible detonation of mortar rounds inside the track, Specialist 4 Copus maintained a heavy volume of suppressive fire on the foe while the wounded Americans were safely evacuated. Undaunted, Specialist 4 Copus continued to place devastating volleys of fire upon the adversary until he was mortally wounded when another enemy round hit his vehicle. Specialist 4 Copus's daring action resulted in the safe evacuation of his comrades. Specialist 4 Copus's extraordinary heroism and selflessness at the cost of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Ms. Tina Duran Ruvalcaba, accepting on behalf of her father, Specialist 4, Jesus S. Duran. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Specialist 4, Jesus S. Duran, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist 4, Jesus S. Duran, distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as an acting M60 machine gunner in Company E, 2nd Battalion, 5th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile, during combat operations against an armed enemy in the Republic of Vietnam on April 10, 1969. That afternoon, the reconnaissance platoon was moving into an elaborate enemy bunker complex when the lead elements began taking concentrated ambush fire from every side. The command post was in imminent danger of being overrun. With an M60 machine gun blazing from his hip, Specialist 4 Duran pushed forward and assumed a defensive position near the command post. As hostile forces stormed forward, Specialist 4 Duran stood tall in a cloud of dust raised by the impacting rounds and bursting grenades directed toward him, and thwarted the enemy with devastating streams of machine gun fire. Learning that 2 seriously wounded troopers lay helplessly pinned down under harassing fire, Specialist 4 Duran assaulted the suppressive enemy positions, firing deadly bursts on the run. Mounting a log, he fired directly into the enemy's foxholes, eliminating 4 and cutting down several others as they fled. Specialist 4 Duran then continued to pour effective fire on the disorganized and fleeing enemy. Specialist 4 Duran's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Command Sergeant Major Michael Grinston, accepting on behalf of Sergeant Candelario Garcia. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant Candelario Garcia, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant Candelario Garcia distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as an acting team leader for Company Bravo, 1st Battalion, 2nd Infantry, 1st Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, during combat operations against an armed enemy in Lai Khe, Republic of Vietnam, on December 8, 1968. On that day, while conducting reconnaissance, Sergeant Garcia and his platoon discovered communication wire and other signs of an enemy base leading into a densely vegetated area. As the men advanced, they came under intense fire. Several men were hit and trapped in the open. Ignoring a hail of hostile bullets, Sergeant Garcia crawled to within 10 meters of a machine gun bunker, leaped to his feet, and ran directly at the fortification, firing his rifle as he charged. Sergeant Garcia jammed 2 hand grenades into the gun port and then placed the muzzle of his weapon inside, killing all 4 occupants. Continuing to expose himself to intense enemy fire, Sergeant Garcia raced 15 meters to another bunker and killed its 3 defenders with hand grenades and rifle fire. After again braving the enemy's barrage in order to rescue 2 casualties,